What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Breeze Fantasy Football Saturday. Every Saturday, we'll be holding a podcast answering all your fantasy questions that were received in our fantasy mailbag on Instagram and our comments on Twitter. We encourage any and all questions to be asked in our fantasy mailbags, whether it's a start, sit question or a trade question. So we're going to start this week. First of all, let's just start off with, it's football. We're back.
Let's
we're
go,
back,
guys.
baby. First Sunday in a long time.
We live for this stuff, man.
Yeah,
we live for
very
this
excited.
stuff.
Very excited.
What a great game, by the way, on Thursday.
Oh yeah, loved it. Mark Cooper and Dak Prescott.
A lot of fantasy points there.
A lot of fantasy points in that game, except for Mike Evans and Zeke owners. They were left out of the fun.
Mike Evans and Zeke were left out of the game. That's correct. All right, so we're gonna start this week with Austin Eckler. I've heard mixed things about him lately. Jimmy, I know you have him in multiple leagues. Do you have any concern about his production this week?
That's a good question. It's a valid question. We know he's been dealing with a little bit of a hamstring injury the last couple of days in practice. Obviously not good news, especially from a guy who drafted in the first round in that Cardinals league, and we know what happens in that Cardinals league with running backs I drafted. So, of course, my heart starts pumping a little bit, but everything I'm seeing so far is that he's expected to play. So we have an article from PFF that was published about 10, 15 minutes ago, so it doesn't get more recent than that. Coach Brandon Staley is saying emphatically he is expected to play. So don't be afraid to fire him up in your lineups as an RB1, RB2. He's got that tough Washington defense, but this is a Washington defense that's tougher against the run, not so much the pass run option, if you know what I'm saying. Good for PPR. So don't be afraid to fire him up. I think he's going to have a pretty solid week. But hey, let's go.
I heard the same thing. And I also heard it's no production or workload cap for him, which that's a big thing for fantasy. Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to start off with a start-sit question. And it'd be great if you guys could specify what kind of league it is. We're going to assume everything is either 0.5 or PPR. I don't really know a lot of people who do standard drafts or no PPR. So we're just going to assume it's 0.5 because it's kind of that middle ground. So we have Brandon Ayuk, Mike Davis, or Laviska Shenault.
For me, I think I'd go Ayuk there because, it's that Lions defense, which is terrible. The 49ers are expected to absolutely blow out the Lions. Yeah. So I think he'll get his fair share of production in that game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I wouldn't be surprised if Laviska pops off for a pretty decent game against that pretty terrible Houston defense too. But for me, it's Ayuk.
Yeah, I think Ayuk and Shenault are in similar boats, but I think Ayuk's a safer play. All right, we're going to move it on to Sutton or Odell Beckham Jr. I'm going to say OBJ. It's the Browns. It's Odell. I'm not exactly sure how Teddy Bridgewater is going to distribute the ball on that team, whether it's going to be Jerry Jeudy, whether it's going to be Cortland Sutton, or whether it's going to be Noah Fant, who his favorite guy is going to be. And Odell's Odell. The Browns are playing Kansas City. I think they're going to be trailing. Wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the game, Odell gets that garbage time touchdown or he's getting thrown the ball for, no reason at the end of the game. It's going to help pick up a few fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, that game is going to be an absolute shootout. So if that game's a shootout, Baker's going to have to throw. Odell is going to at least get 5 catches. And with Odell, he can do so much with just 5 catches.
Yeah.
So I would definitely go Odell there.
I would agree. Both are coming off pretty serious injuries, but like John said, in the pecking order in Denver, we don't really know who's going to be the favorite there just yet. So at least for week 1, it's definitely OBJ for me. We know he's going to be the top guy in the receiving game.
All right, let's move on to Damian Harris or Corey Davis. This is a pretty interesting one.
That's a good one. I like Corey Davis this week. I think he's going to get a lot of targets. We saw in the preseason, he definitely got a lot of targets. But I think it's Damian Harris this week. You usually favor the running back over the receiver when it comes to flex, unless there's definitely like a big gap in between them. And in this case, I think Harris, he's going to get a lot of the workload with Sony Michel now out of there. We already thought he was going to get a lot of the workload, and this just kind of confirms that. So for me, it's Damian Harris this week.
Yeah, especially in a PPR format, Corey Davis is very interesting in this case, but I think you have to go with the running back. He'll get he'll get the most touches out of those two. So I think you go Damian Harris there.
Yeah, I agree. You're going to go Damian Harris here. Look, Corey Davis by any means is not a bad play in deeper leagues. I actually think Corey Davis without Jameson Crosby is going to be a great play. I just, like Jimmy said, I favor the running back also. It's safer touch or production.
Yeah,
All
and
right,
Cam Newton's not there anymore to vulture those goal line TDs, so
correct. So it
expect him to
should
get some
be,
goal line work too.
yeah,
So
it should be him on the goal line also. All right, let's move on to Deontay Johnson or Adam Thielen.
I think it's a stealing for me. I think it's just, and I like Deontay Johnson more over the course of the whole season, but I think with the matchup against the Bengals, I think Jefferson and Thielen are going to get their fair share of production in that matchup. So I think it's stealing for me.
Yeah, I agree. I have Deontay Johnson in a bunch of leagues, and I'm also nervous this week with Tre'Davious White shadowing him, which is how it seems it's going. That Tre'Davious will be lined up across from him. One of the best cornerbacks in the league, I think, is going to cap Deontay Johnson's production. And
Yeah.
I think Adam Thielen could go easily for 100+ yards and have a touchdown against the Bengals defense, Bengals secondary.
yeah, that's a really tough one. Honestly, the Bengals secondary isn't as bad as at least their front seven is. I think this could end up being a game where Minnesota runs the ball a lot. I think Dalvin Cook's gonna have a really phenomenal game. So I'm not sure how much the passing game's gonna get. I do like Thielen for some touchdown upside, and it's really, really close for me. I think I probably had them. Like, I think we had them really close in our rankings.
Yeah, we did.
One's different. So it's kind of a toss up for me. I think I might lean Deontay just because I think he'll get more targets. But if Tre'Davious White is shadowing, it's a little bit risky. So honestly, it's kind of a coin flip for me. You guys are saying Thielen, so I'll probably ride that Thielen pick. But very, very close.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I think Deontay Johnson will lead the team in targets this week, but it's just the differences of the defenses that they're playing against. The Bengals defense against the Bills defense, I would go Thielen against that Bengals defense all day.
I think you also have to think a little bit about game scripts. I feel like Minnesota is probably going to lead, so they might run the ball late, whereas Pittsburgh might be trailing Buffalo, so they'll be throwing the ball. So there's a lot of factors that could go into this. So it's very, very close.
Yeah, this is definitely a start sit that you're probably not going to go wrong with. I think both players are great fantasy options this week. I just leaning towards Adam Thielen a little bit more than Deontay Johnson. All right, let's move on to Michael Pittman or Devonta Smith. This is an interesting one. I think Michael Pittman, I think Michael Pittman might be a little bit safer here. He's the wide receiver one. They're playing Seattle. It should be a close game where they trail and he gets some action later in the game. I don't necessarily trust the connection between Carson Wentz and his receivers in Indianapolis yet, but I also don't necessarily know how hot Devonta Smith is going to come firing out of the gun.
That's valid. That's valid. I would probably favor Devonta Smith, though. I know we have some concerns about Jalen Hurts in the passing game. I think neither of them are great options just based on the situations they're in. But I'd favor Smith just because that matchup against Atlanta. This is a very, very poor pass defense last year, and we expect it to be very similar this year. And considering Devonta is definitely the top guy there, he's the most talented receiver in that room. I'd probably lean towards Devonta just to get more work and probably do a lot more with his targets. With Michael Pittman, like you said, I don't really know if I trust the connection between Wentz and his receivers yet. It's kind of a similar situation to what we have in Denver. We just don't really know where he's going to go with the ball just yet. So I might wait a week on starting Pittman. I do love him season long. I think he's very valuable considering where people drafted him. But for this week, I think I'd lean towards Devonta Smith.
Yeah, I think it has to be Smith here, even though I don't really, unless it's like a top tier rookie, I don't really like starting rookies week one because you don't really know, what their workload's going to be. But in this case, I think with that matchup against Atlanta, I think you got to go Devonta Smith there.
All right, so this one is actually a start two question. It's between, looks like 5 running backs. We have Myles Gaskin, Kareem Hunt, Darrell Henderson, Damian Harris, and Tyson Williams.
Very interesting. Very interesting group of running backs there. Of course, with the Gus Edwards injury, Tyson Williams becomes a very, very interesting week one player.
Yeah.
It's a pretty weak Raiders run D. So I actually have him in a couple of leagues where I had Eckler. So if Eckler wasn't going to play, it was going to be pretty interesting to see if I had to throw Tyson in there. But this is an interesting group of running backs. I think I would definitely throw Harris in there. I think he's probably the one that I would say is locked in. The other ones, though, it's pretty tough. Henderson with Michelle there, we figure he'll still be the top guy. We just don't know how much work he's going to get. With Hunt, obviously, it's going to depend on how much they decide to pass the ball to him because he's not really going to get too many rushes. That's all Nick Chubb right there. Myles Gaskin, there's been some worry about him being in a committee. Is he going to be a 3-down back? Week 1, that's a tough risk to play. And then Tyson Williams, just based on the fact that this backfield has been decimated in the last couple of weeks. We don't really know much about him. We don't really know much about the situation. So just based on the fact that it's week 1 and what we know about these players, I would probably go Harris, and I'd love to roll the dice on Gaskin. But I might lean towards Hunt. It's really tough though between him and Henderson and Gaskin. I'd love to start any one of those 3 just based on those options. I would definitely fade Tyson Williams just based on the running backs you have available there. I just might lean Hunt just because I think that Cleveland Browns, like we talked about with OBJ, they're probably going to pass the ball late, and I think Kareem Hunt's going to be involved in a lot of those. So I might lean Hunt out of those. But I mean, if you guys have any different opinions, they're all valid to me. So, but yeah, for me, maybe Hunt.
Yeah, I think, especially in a PPR format, I think Hunt is one of the guys because I mean, I think that game's going to be a shootout. So they're going to have to pass the ball, and Hunt is the passing down back. So I think if it's PPR, I think you got to put Hunt in one of those spots. And then the other spot, I think it does have to be Damian Harris, even though I do like Henderson against that Bears defense, which honestly isn't the same defense from a couple of years ago, and the Rams are projected to blow them out. I don't think Sony Michel just got there. I don't know how much of a role he's going to have in week 1. He'll definitely cut into Henderson's workload later on in the season, but at least I think this week Henderson will have the bulk of the production in that offense. However, I like Damian Harris and Hunt this week a little more, so I would go down those 2.
Yeah, full PPR, I would probably say Hunt over Henderson. Harris is locked for me also. But I actually kind of lean towards Henderson in half point, no point PPR. Just because you lose that point for reception too. But I think Henderson's gonna get a decent workload. And look, I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the game it's him getting the ball, or even if it's him and Michelle splitting the ball at the end of the game. I think both this week, at least both of those running backs, if they split touches, are going to be fantasy relevant running backs.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, it's between Hunt, Harris, and Henderson. And depending on the league format, I think you just got to pick out of those 3.
Yeah, agreed. All right. So the next question is, again, we have Kareem Hunt, Laviska Shenault, or Devonta Smith.
Pick one out of those.
Pick one. Yeah.
I think I would go Hunt. For the same reasons we just discussed.
Yeah, I like Hunt also. Even if it's a 0 PPR, any PPR really, I think Hunt is going to have 6+ receptions in that game against Kansas City. That's just my opinion. He could easily have 10+ touches, but a few carries. But I think he'll see 6+ receptions.
Yeah, I'd probably lean Kareem Hunt there. Again, Laviska Shenault is an interesting option, but it is a week 1 with a rookie quarterback and a pretty new offensive scheme. A lot of new players in that offense. So I'd probably lean Hunt just for safety reasons, and if it is PPR, definitely. But like I said, Shenault is definitely not a bad option this week.
Yeah, especially in week 1, I would lean, for the most part, towards the known commodities over rookies or Laviska with the rookie quarterback. Hunt is a proven commodity in fantasy, so I would just go him week 1, play it safe.
Yeah, I agree. Hunt is solidified as well as a fantasy running back. All right, the next question is Chris Carson or DJ Moore. This is a pretty full point PPR, by the way. I'm assuming this is a smaller team league. That's a pretty that's a pretty nice debate to have to play whether Chris Carson, DJ Moore to flex. Personally, full point PPR. Look, I'm going to lean towards the running back. I do think that the Seahawks are going to beat the Colts this week. And I do think Chris Carson has a pretty good upside.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I think I'd lean towards Chris Carson. Like I said, I usually do favor the running back. In this case, I think Carson's going to have a pretty solid week, especially full point PPR. He does tend to get a few receptions, and he's always dangerous for a touchdown and for a 100-yard gain. I do like the matchup with DJ Moore against the Jets. This is a Jets defense that's usually not very good, and we don't expect much more out of them this year.
Yeah, Sam Darnold's coming for revenge too. He's coming
Yeah,
for
but we
revenge.
know that Robbie Anderson's there. We know
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey's the number one guy always, and Terrace Marshall's now there. He was a very, very intriguing option if you can get him off the waiver wire. Not
Mhm.
necessarily for this week, but for season long.
Yeah, coming down the road for sure.
Yeah, so I would probably lean Chris Carson here.
Yeah, I want to say DJ Moore so badly because he's just playing against that Jets secondary that's just really bad. But I think you got to lean towards the running back. Carson's going to get the more touches than Moore, so I think you just go Chris Carson, play it safe.
All right, next question we got is Odell, DeAndre Swift, or Curtis Samuel in a 0.5 PPR.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure Curtis Samuel's on the IR. So I guess that rules one out for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Debo Samuel. I
Oh,
apologize.
Debo.
I
That makes
apologize. I apologize.
I think I'd still, out of those guys, probably still bench Debo. But what was it, Swift and Odell?
Swift and Odell.
That's an interesting one. I think, like I said, we usually lean running back. I'd probably go Swift here because I think he'll see a pretty sizable workload. This is a pretty formidable San Francisco defense that's healthy now this year. They weren't healthy last year. So they get their guys back this year. But I think Swift is probably going to be a big focal point of this offense.
Yeah.
Williams probably spelling him and maybe getting a little bit of receiving work. But just based on the fact that everything we've seen is that Swift is going to get a pretty sizable workload. He's not limited. You know, he dealt with a little bit of a groin injury in the last couple of weeks. But it looks like he's all guns are firing for this guy heading into week one. So I think I'd probably lean towards Swift here. Just a little bit. Again, tough defense, but he's the running back. So
Yeah, I lean towards Swift here. I think Swift has a higher floor than Odell, but I also think he has lower ceiling. Odell, we talked about that Kansas City game. Could easily be a shootout. Could easily see 60 points in that game. Could easily see both teams put up 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think Odell has a very high ceiling this week, but I think Swift has a much safer floor.
Was it a half PPR?
Yeah, half.
Okay, then I think if it was full PPR, I would actually lean Odell, but since it's only half, I would lean towards the running back again. I mean, Swift, with someone like Swift, he's like kind of matchup proof in a way because he'll, depending on either game script, he's going to get work. He's going to run the ball or he's going to be the passing down back. So even if the Lions, are getting blown out, which they probably will, Swift will get passing down work, which will be beneficial in a half PPR league for those running backs. So I think I would lean towards Swift.
All right, next question is Saquon Barkley or Tyler Lockett? There's another smaller team league here. Look, personally, I think even with the production workload that Joe Judge is saying Saquon has, if it's a close game, Saquon will be in the game. I mean, maybe he won't be all three downs. Maybe if it's a pass play, they'll throw Devontae Booker in for a third down, let him sit out of play. I still think Saquon will have north of 15 touches. And with 15 touches, you know what Saquon can do. It only takes one play for him to go for a 60-yard touchdown or have a reception there. He breaks out and beats a bunch of linebackers down the field. So, I like Saquon this week, even with the quote unquote production workload that he's supposed to have.
Yeah, I think I would go Saquon. I think he's going to get around, like you said, I think he gets around 16 touches, probably 12 carries, 4 catches. That's what I would kind of expect from Saquon this week. And it's Saquon Barkley. He can get you fantasy points with that workload. So I would lean Saquon, especially with Ty Lockett, who has boom weeks, but then other weeks gets like 1 point. So I would lean the running back of Saquon there.
Yeah, I've become less and less nervous about Saquon just based on the reports we've had coming out of camp about his recovery and how he's basically going to play week 1, which is really promising because we didn't really think that a week or 2 ago. So very promising for Saquon. Happy for him for his recovery. So I'd probably lean Saquon this week. Like you guys said, he can be very efficient when the time comes. So I think he's going to give you enough fantasy points where he can get solid RB2 production at the least. I'd be surprised if he completely busts out. For a 5-point week or something like that. So if anything, he'll even fall into a touchdown. So I would probably go Saquon here.
All right. We got Higbee or Tunyon, full PPR.
That's an interesting one. In this case, I think it's similar to what we say with the rookies where we don't really start a rookie because we don't really know what to expect. Higbee's obviously not a rookie, but with the new QB, we don't really know where Stafford might go with the ball just yet. We have we have an idea, and we hope that he goes to his tight ends, and we hope he goes to Woods and Cup. But we don't know exactly what the distribution is going to be between the three of them. At least with Tunyon, he was kind of a touchdown dependent option. I shouldn't even say kind of. He was very touchdown dependent last season. But this is a New Orleans defense. This is a New Orleans team that's very different than last year. They're definitely weaker than last year. I think now that Rodgers is back, this offense is more or less the same in terms of its weapons. I think we could see Tunyon get a touchdown. And I think that's kind of what you're banking on there. If you start Higbee, you're kind of banking on, a lot of targets coming his way, which we really just don't know if that's going to be the case. So for me, I'd probably lean Tunyon. I don't think Higbee is a terrible play between the two of them. But for me, I'd probably lean Tunyon and hope for a touchdown.
Yeah, I agree with literally everything you just said. I'm going Tunyon also.
Tunyon for me as well.
All right, that was quick. There's a question here that says Saquon or Claypool. I'm gonna say Saquon right there. I think we just explained why Saquon. We take Saquon over the receiver there.
Saquon.
All right, so the next question we have is Russell Gage or Marvin Jones, full point PPR.
For me, it's Marvin Jones, I think. I do like Russell Gage in terms of his season-long outlook, but as a week 1 starter, I would probably fade him here. I know the Eagles' defense is not very great, but then again, neither is the Houston defense. And at least with Marvin Jones, he's the top guy, most likely. That's what we've been seeing in preseason, that, Trevor Lawrence likes to target Marvin Jones. And he was dealing with a little bit of injury, but it seems like he's a go for week 1. So for me, it's going to be Marvin Jones against a pretty weak Houston defense. I think he'd get you some pretty decent production. With Russell Gage, he'd have to outperform Kyle Pitts, which I don't really think is going to happen. I think Kyle Pitts is going to kind of act as that wide receiver 2 almost. So I'd probably lean Jones.
I think I would go Gage, because looking at the over-under totals for the games, and the Falcons and Eagles are 48.5, and the Jaguars and Texans are 45.5. So that game seems to have more points to be scored in, which would correlate to more fantasy points. So I think I would go Gage. I think he gets a decent workload with the Falcons throwing the ball.
Yeah, I'm also gonna say Gage here. I kind of just trust that, Matt Ryan, there's a veteran quarterback over Trevor Lawrence being the rookie. Do I think Marvin Jones out of every year? Yes. Week 1, I would say fade Marvin Jones, play Russell Gage. All right, next question we have is Cortland Sutton or DJ Moore. It's a pretty easy one for me. I'm going DJ Moore against the Jets.
DJ Moore all day.
Yeah, I don't
Definitely
think that one needs much explanation. This is a pretty interesting one. This is Thielen or Lockett. For me, Thielen has the higher floor. I'm one for a higher floor. Can Lockett catch 2 touchdowns and have 100 yards? Yes, absolutely. Will that happen? Probably not. I'm going to say Thielen on this one, probably the safer bet.
Yeah, I'll go Thielen as well against that Bengals defense.
Yeah, I think originally I might have said Lockett because I'm not really scared of this Indy, corner group. I think Lockett's probably got the higher ceiling here. I think Thielen's probably got the higher floor. So I guess it depends what you value, what your team's looking like for this week, what the matchups are with your other players. That's kind of how I would see it. But if you're looking for a safer floor, I'd probably go Thielen here.
All right, we got 2 more questions. The first one is David Montgomery or Miles Sanders?
I think I would go Sanders, because it's just the matchup. Like the Bears are going against the Rams defense. That's gonna be really.
That's gonna be tough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would go Sanders, just because of the matchup.
Yeah, I'd probably go Sanders.
That front 7 on the Rams is pretty tough to beat. All right, and our last question for the week is Darrell Henderson or Mike Davis?
I think I would lean Darrell Henderson. I just don't think Sony Michel is gonna really cut into his workload that much this week, because he just got there, and Wayne Gallman is in Atlanta now, and I think he might cut into Mike Davis's workload this season. So I think I'll go Darrell Henderson for week 1.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
yeah, Mike
100%.
Davis might be a little bit more of a risky pick just with Wayne Gallman there.
Mhm.
But if the Falcons are passing the ball, I think he's going to be involved more than Gallman is. So I think it's kind of the same situation as like the Lockett Thielen debate. I think Davis probably has the higher ceiling, but a lower floor. And I think Henderson's probably the safer option. So again, it'll just kind of depend on what your team's looking like this week. So I'll kind of leave it at that. Just, make the pick. I know you guys are like in Henderson.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a safe pick, go Henderson. If you want more upside, go Davis.
Yep. And so those are all the questions that we received for Start Sit for this week. If you have any questions, feel free to message us on Instagram, comment on Twitter, however you can find us to reach us, please do it. We're also going to be going live on Instagram at 12:30 tomorrow before Sunday to answer any last minute questions you might have. So please tune into that with any questions you might have. And the last question we have is actually a trade question. Is Najee Harris for Ezekiel Elliott? It's a pretty interesting one. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw our Instagram and Twitter posts. We said, go get Zeke if you can. And I think Harris, we haven't seen Harris plays yet. Ezekiel Elliott at the end of the day. He's a top 5 running back in fantasy. I'd accept that in a heartbeat. I'm taking Zeke over Harris.
Yeah, I would lean the Zeke side just because the offensive line for the Cowboys is just way better than the Steelers. I mean, Harris is gonna get his share. He's gonna, he's a 3-down back on that team. But
yeah,
Zeke is the 3-down back on the Cowboys. So I would go Zeke.
Yeah, if you're getting Zeke, I would definitely do that deal.
Yeah, that's the trade. He's receiving Zeke.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a deal that I think needs to be done because it's really an RB1 for an RB1 almost. I mean, I don't know.
It's a very lateral move.
Yes.
Like, it's not a deal that I think needs to be done. It's probably one that I wouldn't go out of the way to do. But if you're getting offered that, yeah, I'd accept that. I think a lot of people are probably not valuing Zeke where he should be after that game. And we kind of figured that would happen. It's a crazy good Bucks run D. So
yeah, he played the best run defense in the league. But then they played him once a year. That's it. He's done. He's playing, okay.
Yeah, he got the worst
run
out of the way
defense the rest of
first.
it. And look, I watched that game start to end, being the first game. They didn't want to run the ball. Their game plan was, we're not running the ball.
They were not running the ball at all.
Get the ball outside.
Dak Prescott had
outside the hatches.
career high in passing attempts.
Yeah, it was get the ball
403
outside
passing
the
yards.
hatches. Get the ball outside the hatches. That was the name of the game. You're not going to see that for the rest of the season for the Cowboys. They will say, here you go, Zeke. Go do what you do the rest of the way.
Yeah, another important thing to point out was that Zach Martin was out, which is a big piece on that offensive line, especially in the run game. So with him back and against, not the Bucks run defense, I think Zeke is very favorable for the rest of the season. So buy low.
Agreed. If somebody's selling low, go grab him. I know, honestly, a lot of fantasy managers are getting smart. They're holding on to Zeke. So if you can get him, you can go ahead and try. But it might be a little bit tougher than we expected. Fantasy managers are smart these days. They've been listening to Breeze.
Yeah, they've been tuning in. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you still have any questions, feel free to ask us and we'll get to them. And look, thanks for tuning into Breeze Fantasy Football. It's just fantasy football for you, made easy breezy.
Peace.